that you're doing right now and watching me? Yes, that's all. Bye.
Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hillcrest Church. We're glad that you're with us if you're just signing on. What a week it has been. I don't know about you, but this week has had some strong emotions for me and challenges. And just looking at our world, it's a reminder, a humble reminder that we believe in a robust doctrine of sin, right? That we are really broken. And so is every system that we build, and every good intention is still tainted with this disease of sin that we have. If you look out at the world, if you look at the news, if you look at Facebook, if you talk with people, everyone is angry. And there is plenty to be angry about. COVID-19, we've been cooped up for months. The murder of George Floyd and the injustice that represents. And then, of course, injustice as it does begets injustice that begets injustice. And the cycle goes on. We all taste the bitter fruit of injustice. Even this morning, some were emotion loaded for a fight. There's anger in our hearts. So we're going to look at a Bible text this morning, a Bible story about anger. Our text is going to be Genesis chapter 4, the story of Cain and Abel. Now, this story in Genesis chapter 4, which is the fourth chapter of the Bible, is what I call an origin text. And what I mean by that is this. It's a story at the beginning. It's a story about beginnings. It's a story about the very first human family. This is the first account we find about humanity after the sin in the garden, when Adam and Eve ate the fruit, right? So and then the curse came. And so this then is a picture of family life under sin. It's a story of the human condition. It's a story of all of us and our heritage and what life is really like and what we have to deal with. This first story outside of the garden of the first family includes all the best and worst of human potential. So the story goes from creating life to destroying life, from intimacy to jealousy and resentment, from calling on the name of the Lord to praising the Lord to lying to God, from the developments of arts and culture to the use of human ingenuity for violent purposes, from living in the presence of God to alienation from God, from living at home to being displaced. They're all here in this first story of the human family and what we do and what temptation looks like. So this morning, we're going to have a little different style sermon than we have been doing. We've been mostly kind of in the pastoral letters, a teaching that St. Paul or others have handed down. This is a different kind of text. So this is a story. It calls us to listen. It calls us to wonder. It calls us to put ourselves in the story and ask, what does this mean for me, or where am I in this story? And so we're going to talk a lot this morning, and we're going to listen to each other. This is about us. So if you're not ready to chat yet on Facebook Live, would you consider doing so, as we're going to ponder and wonder and look at this story together. All right, so the story of Cain and Abel begins like this. Genesis 4, chapter 1, we read, Adam made love to his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. She said, with the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man. Later she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now Abel kept flocks, and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel also brought an offering, fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flock. The Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering, but on Cain and his offering he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry, and his face was downcast. Here's what I want us to think about together this morning to begin with. Why does Cain get angry? Why do we get angry? What in this story, what does it tell us about the source of our anger? If you want to comment and let's have a discussion. Why do you think Cain gets angry? Why do we get angry? What led to his anger in this story? Go ahead and I'll just pause a moment and wait for you to talk with me about Why do we get angry? I hope you're all doing well this morning. Once again, we're in Genesis chapter 4, the story of Cain and Abel. And so we're chatting together. I hope you're all doing well. The question is, why does Cain get angry? Any thoughts on why Cain gets angry? What is it that leads us to anger? There may be a delay here, so we're just waiting for the delay. I see, let me say some hellos. Thad and Lori, the Nelsons, the Seymours, the Browns, good to see you this morning. Nextris, good to see you. Berberinas, good to see you. Whedons, Heaths. I don't get to see those of you on YouTube as you watch it, but if you're on Facebook, I can. Because Marzix, Petabones, great to see you this morning. We get angry because we don't get our way. That's a pretty good summary there, Berberinas. Yeah, we don't get our way, and it makes us angry, right? We feel like we deserve to get our way, and so we get angry. That says I get angry when someone doesn't recognize my good intentions. Or Abby says that. Yeah, that God, I mean, this is an interesting story, right? Because they both bring offerings, and it just says that God looked with favor on Abel and not with Cain. Like, there was something, we don't know what happened there. The story doesn't tell us what happened there, why Cain's offering was not greeted with favor by the Lord. But maybe he had good intentions. And like Marty and Jeannie say, there's this perception of unfair treatment. My brother got something that I didn't, and that leads to our anger, right? When we are perceived to have unfair treatment. I was thinking about my kids this week, right? And it seems like one of the first words out of kids' mouths is, there's mama, dada kind of thing, but that's not fair is one of the first words it seems like kids deal with, right? We have this innate feeling of fairness. And when that fairness, whether it's somebody gets a treat or a toy and somebody else doesn't, or they get to spend time with mom or dad, they don't, there's this, that's not fair. That's the very first thing out of our toddler's mouth that feels like. We want to feel acceptable, Lori says. Absolutely. Yeah, there's this, we want to feel righteous. We want to feel good. We want to know that we're accepted and loved. Anne, John, thank you for this one. There's this comparison. We compare ourselves to others. And we do that so that we can feel good enough. Berberinas say, yeah, Cain maybe feels a sense of guilt. We don't know what was wrong with his offering. Maybe it's a sense of guilt, but that somehow his offering wasn't good enough. So this whole thing leads to this situation where there's injustice, right? Maybe there's guilt. He didn't get what his brother got. Cain feels slighted. He feels like this was a provocation. And who did the provoking? Well, God did the provoking, right? He's the one that didn't do what Cain wanted. He's the one who didn't greet his offering with favor. God didn't do what he expected. He didn't get what he thought he deserved. Now, this is a great text because it kind of poses the question to us of life, right? Why do some things happen to people and not to others? Why do the wicked prosper? I mean, there's a whole section in the whole Bible, this theme of the wicked prosper and the righteous perish. Why does one person succeed who maybe doesn't work so hard, but others fail and work really hard? Why do some plants grow, some die? Why do some churches grow and some close? Why does this disease strike one person in one way and another person in a different way? Why isn't life fair? Why do some respond to God's grace and others don't? These are all the questions of life of, in a sense, why do some things happen and others don't? And the question is, how do we respond to those things? And we see that Cain responds in anger. Why did somebody get the chance that I didn't? Why did they get the promotion? Why did God do this for them and not for me, right? What's behind all this anger that we're seeing, this injustice, this slighting? What's behind it? And the answer is, what's behind our anger is pain. Cain feels pain. He feels slighted. He feels like his offering wasn't good enough. Injustice causes pain. When we are injured, we experience pain. So I want us to think about, how have you responded to pain this week? First of all, your own pain. We're all grieving in some ways. We all experience pain. The murder of George Floyd, the protests, COVID, all these things are painful. There's no way away from the pain of life right now. And that's not even talking about the personal challenges in our life. That's just as a society. You know, Americans' answer to pain is there's a pill for that, right? That we want to make pain disappear as quickly as possible, not live through it. And unfortunately, there is no magic pill for this, for the life we're in right now. It's painful. And the weeks and days ahead are going to be painful. So how do we respond to our own pain? But also thinking about this week, how do you respond to other people's pain? Because injustice creates pain. And we live in a world right now that is experiencing pain that is fresh before our eyes. It's not new pain, the racial injustice. How do we respond to other people's pain? Well, let's see how God responds to Cain's pain. Verse 6, read with me. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Why are you angry? Why is your face downcast? If you do what is right, will you not be accepted? But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." So here we see God respond to Cain's anger. And what does God do? He listens. He asks. He attends. He opens up the conversation. Cain, why are you angry? God just doesn't let him go away in his pain. No, God approaches Cain in our pain. God approaches us in our pain. He says, "Why are you angry? Tell me about your anger." God welcomes our anger and pain. I mean, there's a whole book of the Bible called Lamentations. You look at the psalmist David and this different psalms talking about pain and calling God names and accusing God of things, of expressing their pain to God. And that is not a sign of unfaith or somehow wrong, but rather we take our whole human experience to God and He welcomes it and He listens and He heals us. So God attends to Cain's pain. He names it. He gives him this gift of naming his feeling as anger, right? He's listening fully. What are some of the ways that, here's a question for you. What are some of the ways that we deal with other people's pain? Go ahead and, I know there's a little bit of go ahead and chat about it. What are some of the ways that we deal with other people's pain? When we have seen pain around us this week, how have you seen people respond? How do you respond? God attends to Cain's pain. What do we do? We can attend, but what are some of the other things that we do with people's pain? Because pain's not easy to deal with. It makes us uncomfortable. It asks things of us. So what are some of the different ways that we attend with, or we respond to people's pain around us? I don't know if you've ever had an experience where you're grieving or you've experienced a slight or injustice, and there's helpful responses that people have come and given you. There's also unhelpful responses. And so how we respond to people in pain is hugely important. So how about some thoughts? How do we respond to people's pain around us? We try to minimize their pain, that says, right? That's insightful because it hurts me to see it. Yeah, we try to minimize other people's pain, right? So I call that dismissing. We try to dismiss other people's pain. We say, you shouldn't feel pain for that, or it's not a big deal, or what's wrong with you that you're experiencing that? That's not really as big of injury as you're making it out to be, right? That's one way that we dismiss other people's pain, absolutely. We can encourage people. Thanks, Ann and John. We can encourage them with God's Word, absolutely. That's part of attending to people is encouraging them. What else do we do with people's pain? We dismiss. We say, you shouldn't feel pain for that. We've seen all sorts of responses this week. If you are on social media at all or watching the news, we do all sorts of things with pain. Any other thoughts of what we do with people's pain? We dismiss. How about this one? We discount. That is, we compare it to ourselves in order to minimize. well, that may have happened to you, but what about my pain? Right? Oh, I see that they're in pain, but really, it's kind of like the dismissing one, right? But we discount. It's kind of, this happened to you, but do you know my life? Do you know what's happened to me? Right? That's a way of dismissing, of discounting their pain. We can pray for it. Ooh, we can try to fix for it. Thanks, Marty and Jeannie. Yeah, we can try to fix it. So we try to, in our own power, kind of, and there's a fixing that is attending and sitting with, but then there's a fixing of trying to make it go away because it makes us feel uncomfortable. We dismiss it. We try to fix it, right? Yeah, that dismiss it. You shouldn't feel pain for that. It's not a big deal. Or if I just have the right words, that somehow I'm gonna fix it for you. So we dismiss. How about this one? I've seen this week. We deflect. Right? So instead of being with the person in their pain and sitting with them and attending to it, we say, well, you're in pain, but what about this pain over there? I saw a cartoon this week that was great. Someone breaks their leg and calls for help. And their point is they say, go get help to another person. And the person doesn't say, right, well, your leg's broken, but what about my legs? That's deflection, right? Instead of attending to the one in pain, we make it about ourselves. We make it about a different issue than attending and listening and being fully present in somebody else's pain. We dismiss, we deflect, we discount, right? We compare to minimize. How about this? We distance ourselves. We refuse to listen. We have no compassion. We just dismiss it and say, well, that's their pain over there, and it's too hard. It asks too much of me to try to attend to that person or listen. I don't really need to. That's their own problem. And so we distance ourselves from other people's pain. Another one that we see is we deride each other, which is basically saying, your pain is there because there's something wrong with you. Right? This is the character assassination, right? So bad things happen to you because you did something wrong. Or you're in pain because you did something wrong. There's something innately wrong with you in your character that you deserve this. The universe was out to get you. We deride each other.
Joanne just wants you to talk about good responses.
Joanne just wants me to talk about good responses.
Yeah, she's such a good...
Joanne, you're so great. You've got some great responses. Yeah. So we deride, we defend. There were defensiveness. Okay, so here's what defensiveness looks like with pain. I'm on the negative list right now because there's a lot of, we need to realize what it is, how we respond inappropriately to pain. Defensiveness looks like making it about us rather than making it about their pain. So instead of attending to them and listening and sitting with them, we make it about us, right? Well, what does that mean for me? Or how does that affect me? Or I'm uncomfortable with that, so I'm not going to pay attention. Or how dare they say that maybe I did something wrong. Right? That's defensive. It's making the issue about myself rather than the person who's experiencing pain. Well, you guys all have some great ideas. I'm glad to see it about how to positively respond. Right? We're comforting them. We uplift them. We try to relate to their pain. Absolutely, we can do that. Sometimes it's helpful, sometimes not so much because it can take the focus off of them to us. But yes, we can try to be with them in their pain is the goal of that, right? To sit with them. Just what God does, right? God goes to Cain and says, why are you angry? He attends to him. It's just what Jesus did with our pain, right? What did Jesus do? Did he stay in heaven and be like, you guys are painful, there's sin, it's messed up, injustice, you're separated from God, too bad. Or it's all your own fault. Or really, it's, let's talk about something. No, what did Jesus do? He entered in, he healed us, he became one of us, he took it on himself. He didn't say, well, God, that's not my issue. No, he took it on himself, and he entered into our pain, and he took it on, and he provided healing. And that's what we're called to do as Christ followers. To listen, to hear, to learn, to humble ourselves to the pain around us. Lamenting in the Bible is the process of expressing pain. And it's interesting that when most often lament is used to talk about a communal practice. It's communal. It's everybody together. It's not just one person alone in their pain. But when we lament well, we lament together. We share people's pain together. And so the burden is lighter and healing comes in. Like, we come and we sit with each other. You know, Job's friends in the book of Job, great book about pain and suffering in the Bible. Job's friends, they give him really bad advice. But they come and they sit with him in his pain. And they do that right. When we look at God's response to Cain, God's words to him reflect a deep concern for Cain's future. Right? There's these two courses that Cain can take with his life. Right? He can choose to control his anger and to respond appropriately, or he can choose to let his anger have its way. Sin is crouching at his door, and he has to control it. We all have to choose how we respond to pain, how we respond to other people's pain. So God gives Cain a gift. He names his feelings. He points out the nature of his inner struggle. He says, here's what's really going on in your soul. Cain knows that God understands him. Cain knows how God relates to people in the midst of struggle. I mean, this is the first family story that God will not intervene to force Cain to go one way to kind of handle the temptation to sin in his life or not. But Cain must decide how to respond to his anger with the help of the knowledge that God has given him, that there is sin and there is righteousness. That is the same choice that we face in our pain. One of my Henry Nouwen, who is a spiritual giant of our day, who passed away recently, said of the Bible, talking about anger and God, said, "It is clear that only by expressing our anger and hatred directly to God will we come to know the fullness of his love and our freedom." That is, if we hide from God who we are, right, we don't experience the fullness of his freedom and love. But if we can come to God with all of our aches and pains and anger, he welcomes us, and he hears and he knows. So there's this choice been set up by God, right? He warns Cain, you're angry. He attends to his pain and says, you're going to have a choice with how to deal with the pain that you're feeling. So then as we continue to read, here's the question I want you to talk with me about. How does Cain respond to his pain? How do we respond to our own pain? Let's read the story and find out. Now Cain said to his brother Abel, this is verse 8, let's go out to the field. While they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, where is your brother Abel? I don't know, he replied. Am I my brother's keeper? The Lord said, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out from the ground. Now you are under a curse and driven from the ground, which opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand. When you work the ground, it will no longer yield its crops for you. You will be a restless wanderer on the earth. So what does Cain do with his anger? What does he do with his anger? God set out this choice for him. What does Cain do with his anger? Look at his response and see what he does with this whole situation. Remember why he's angry. He's experienced in his mind an injustice. He's been slighted. What he wanted to happen didn't go right with God. God didn't bless him like he wanted or receive his offering like he wanted. So what does Cain do with his anger? You know, Ephesians 4:26 says, in your anger, do not sin. The issue is not the anger here, right? We all experience anger. There's no way not to experience anger. Anger can be constructive. It can be a healthy emotion. But Ephesians says, in your anger, do not sin. So what does Cain do with his anger? How does he respond? Joanne says he becomes defensive. Yeah, he makes it about himself, right? He kind of takes it on himself, and he's insulted by God not doing what he wants. He takes it out on someone else. Exactly. So remember, the story here is Cain is upset with God. Abel just did what Abel was doing. But instead of Cain talking to God about his anger and addressing it, what does he do? He strikes out at his brother Abel. Abel's just his brother. He's not part of this episode between Cain and God at all. But he blames his brother. Cain misdirects his anger toward Abel. He creates a victim with his misdirected anger. And Abel becomes the scapegoat for something that God did. God didn't respond how Cain wanted. So Cain goes and strikes his brother. He misdirects his anger. He takes it out on somebody else. Now, as the story keeps going, he blames God. He says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Which is not only a dismissal of his own responsibility. He's Abel's brother. Of course he is Abel's keeper. But this is actually a stab at God, right? So only God in the Old Testament keeps people. That's a term that for God's action. So God keeps people. So Cain is saying, why haven't you been watching over Abel? Why are you asking me? This is deflection, right? Why are you asking me? This is your problem. And God, if you were doing your job better, you would know where Abel is. Why are you bothering me about it? So he strikes out at Cain, or excuse me, strikes out at Abel in order to get back at God. And when God asks him, he says, well, really, this is your problem. So his anger really is with God, but he strikes out and creates other victims in the process. Anna and John, I really like that. He gets rid of the problem. Yeah, instead of addressing his pain, what does he do? He strikes out to try to get rid of his anger, to get rid of his comparison, to get rid of his jealousy. He strikes out to just make it go away. That's a great insight. Cain says Abel is responsible for his feelings. Like he blames the victim that he creates. It's everyone else's fault. It's not my fault. See what I had to deal with. Have you seen that attitude on... Have you felt that attitude this week? The issue is not his feelings. Feelings happen. I don't want to be angry, but I am. I don't want to be hurt, but I am, right? But the question is, what do we do with our anger? What do we do with our feelings? Sin is lurking at the door of our anger. So what Cain does is he strikes. Strikes not with the intention to heal or to expose, but rather with the intention to wound. We need to strike at injustice, at racism. It's not good, it's wrong, it's evil, it's unhealthy, it's not life-giving. It needs to be stopped. So we need to expose injustice. We need to confront the injustice in our society and in ourselves. It needs to be unmasked and called out for what it is. But how we do that matters. And how we respond to each other's pain matters. Because in injustice, the enemy is not people. Right? Christ came in the midst of our pain and reconciled us to God. We need to build allies and partners. We need to bring people together. So the answer is not striking out in our pain and hitting other people and causing more pain and creating victims. Injustice begets injustice, right? And so protests become looting. It's a mess of injustice, right? If we strike out in our pain. So how do we be people who sit with pain, acknowledge pain, and be allies and partners of those who are in pain so that the pain can be redressed, it can be resolved, the healing can come rather than just picking up rocks and throwing them at each other. You know, the most beautiful images for me this week are when the police and the protesters come together to lament injustice. That's a beautiful model. And we live in a world, that there is economic interest in stoking the fires of anger. And sometimes I think if we just sat and listened with each other instead of throwing labels around or throwing rocks at each other or judging, if we came together and listened and sat and attended to each other's pain rather than defending and deflecting and dismissing, that is the way forward. That's the way that creates justice and peace. Otherwise, we're striking and striking back and striking again out of our pain. So we have to be able to come and sit with each other in pain. I think very few people want to be racists. I mean, there's a few, but most of us can, of course, condemn that. So, in a sense, we're all on the same page to begin with. And then we don't know how to deal with that pain. So we start throwing rocks at each other and respond this way or not this way. And we strike and strike again. Because it's our lack of compassion, it's our lack of willingness to sit with each other and hear each other's pain that leads us to strike each other. Here's the thing. Those who bear the name of the Lord, who carry the name Jesus, are taught to take our swords and beat them into plowshares, to take our spears and make them pruning hooks. It's one of the pictures of the end times of what heaven will be like, right? Is that God's people and the earth will lay down their weapons and will turn them into tools, something creative, something that builds, something that harvests and gathers and brings people together. This is what the end looks like. So as God's people who carry the name of Jesus, right, and outrage strikes, anger uncontrolled, what Cain did, strikes out, it lashes out. It needs to be right. It needs to be defend itself. It needs to dismiss others so it can protect itself. Outrage strikes, but love plants. Outrage stabs, takes that spear and stabs, but love gathers. The pruning hook, it gathers in. Love sees justice bloom. So this morning, as we continue in worship, let's ask God to take our weapons and turn them into tools. Let's ask God to take the anger that we feel, the frustration, and you can talk about what you're angry at. I can sure talk about what I'm angry at. But let's do something better. Let's try to think about how we can build instead of strike. How can we attend to each other's pain? And what God does, He asks, why are you angry? He comes and is with Cain in his pain. And the option for us is to voice our pain to God and let Him deal with it. You know, anger can be a constructive emotion. It awakens us to injustice. And one of the things I think we're called to do as Christians during this time is to not look away. Not look away from other people's pain. We're called to look into and peer and unravel the layers and say, what part have I played in this pain around me in this world? Action steps are not really the core issue. There's a plenty of action steps. The core issue is having the heart and the will to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. The heart is the real issue. Can we demonstrate and live out the compassion that Jesus showed for us? Instead of responding in our pain or being threatened by pain, can we attend? Can we be a healing balm to those around us? There is repair work to do this week. Reconciliation. We have a great model for what reconciliation looks like in Jesus. We are called to the ministry of reconciliation, to be Christ's ambassadors, to be peacemakers. There's been wounding in our world. Even in our own church, there are wounds. So we're called to forgive as the Lord has forgiven us. But also we're called to listen, to guard our words. You know, Facebook posts can wound just as surely as anything else. So I want you to think about your pain this week and what you say and your post and what you share. Is it dismissing? Is it deflecting? Is it distancing? Are you trying to prove your own righteousness? Are you trying to strike out? Are you striking out in pain? Or are we attending and listening and humbling ourselves to the brokenness in the world around us? This morning, let's pray that God would turn our swords into a plow and our spears into pruning hooks. We are our brothers and sisters' keepers. We cannot distance ourselves from the world's pain, from each other's pain. That's not what the Savior did. He entered in. He took it on. And he provided the healing that our world needs to know and to hear, but also to experience. And we're the ones that get to show the world that. May we be instruments of Christ's peace. This morning, as we continue in worship, we've got some songs. I want you to think about quieting your hearts, bringing yourself before the Lord, and thinking about this story. Both Cain and Abel brought offerings to the Lord. And I want us to pray that our offering, not just our gift that we will give, our tithes and offerings that we bring, but our offering to the Lord this week, our lives, our emotions, our actions, our thoughts, that they would be acceptable to the Lord. That He would look on them with favor. That we would be people that don't strike out, but that bring healing. That as we bring all of ourselves to the Lord, and we take our anger to the Lord, but that we would be truthful and honest, and that we would bring it to God, that we would handle our anger, that we would control it. And that our offering of our lives this week, the song says, we are an offering, would be acceptable to the Lord. So we've got several songs ready now to lead us kind of in this time of lament, of bringing our hearts to the Lord, of lifting up our world in prayer. And would you quiet yourself this morning and take some time to look inward and ask that the Lord would help you be an acceptable offering, part of the healing in our world this week. I love you all. The tithes and offerings will be taken now, and as we continue in worship, Lord, would you make us instruments, tools of your peace. Amen.
This is a new song for us to be singing at the church. The first lines talk about in the crushing and in the pressing, you're making new wine. You're doing something new. I don't know about you, but my guess is you're feeling a little pressed right now. It's been a heavy week, and as Ryan's been talking about how to love each other through this and how to grieve with each other, let's consider what God is doing in our hearts as we go through trials and as we face challenges, that He's creating something beautiful. So let's sing this song together. I know it's new, but let's make it our prayer this morning. In the crushing, in the pressing, you are making new wine. In the soil I now surrender. want to love the things that you love. We want to fight for the things that you fight for. And we want to be with your people as you are with your people. As we grieve, as I tell my kids, as we're feeling big feelings. Teach us how to walk with you. Show us how to walk with you. So Lord, we don't want to be anywhere else. We want to be right at your side. Show us the things you need to show us so that we can be more and more like you in worship and adoration, Lord, because we love you. Amen.
As we conclude this morning, I want to invite you to a special event on Facebook Live this afternoon at 4 o'clock. It's called Talk, Listen, and Learn Together, Capturing This Crucial Moment to Disarm Racial Divides. And it's hosted by our bishops in the Free Methodist Church and other elected leaders that are definitely worth listening to. So if you're free at 4, I think we're going to try to stream it on our page or share it or give you a link to it. But it's a great opportunity to participate in this humbling, this listening to what's going on in our world. And so I highly recommend that to you. I'm also going to post a conversation later on our page from a church in our family here in the Northwest that did a conversation about race, and that I just found very helpful as a way for us to listen together and to attend to people's pain rather than dismiss it or looking away. Hope you're have a great day today. I love you all. Miss you all. Special thanks to Pastor Trish. Trish has to watch herself on all these videos and edit them multiple times over and does a lion's share of the work. So Trish, thank you for all your hard work and making this possible for us. I'm not sure I could do that. So love you all. Have a great week ahead of you, and I'm praying for you all. Thanks. Thank you for joining us online this morning. If you've heard from God this morning and want to learn more or explore more and be encouraged in your walk with God, would you reach out to us? The places you can do that will be listed below, but Pastor Trish or myself would love to come alongside of you along with our church family and encourage you in your walk with God. Thanks, and we'll see you soon.